guest is Emma Sutton, a brand strategist and director of her own business named Hinter. Hinter is a brand consultancy that focuses specifically on the defence industry, creating brand solutions so companies in this space are equipped to achieve the greatest security benefit possible for Australia. Emma brings 14 years of first-hand real-world experience in the Australian Army and a knack for combining imagination and pragmatism. It's thanks to her strategic creativity that she can serve this specialist space. So welcome, Emma.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, we'd love to start by learning more about your time in the Australian Army, as much as you can share, because it gives some context for what you do in your space. So firstly, what motivated you to join the Australian Army in the first place?
Okay. So I wish that the motivation was something more exciting, but I was only 17 at the time. So I actually I wanted to leave home and I wanted an adventure. So I made my way down to Defence Force recruiting and got myself on a Army gap year program, which was where I had to sign up for 1 year. And you know, I had the opportunity to leave at the end. So normally with the Army, you have to sign up with a 4-year commitment. However, they introduced this program for school leavers so that it wasn't such a daunting task for them to go and join the Army. Well, I think my mum told me it was about maybe 3 or 4 weeks into basic training. And she said, I knew you were never coming back. So I said, because I was signed up for uni in Brisbane and, you know, my parents were, you know, expecting me to come home after 12 months. And she's like, Emma, I knew you were never coming home. And I never did. So that's how I got into the Army. And I never expected it to give me what it has. And the journey that I've gone on, I never expected it. I didn't even know really what I expected from it. But so I joined this gap year. I was an admin assistant basically for the gap year, but within a very short amount of time, I had transferred to Intelligence Corps. And within a very short amount of time, I was in Afghanistan on a deployment. So that was, you know, I think I was in Afghanistan at the age of 20, and I spent 12 months of my life in that country, right back when it was the height of the war on terrorism. And, you know, Australia was facing some pretty crazy threats. I'm just going to turn that down. So anyway, I was Intelligence Corps, and that's fine. I could tell you guys that. So essentially my role was to collect information and analyze it and give that back to my commander so he could make decisions about where to put troops, how to shape the battle space, you know, how to protect our troops from getting hurt or killed, and a variety of other things. So I did that. I went to Afghanistan twice, and then I left the Army full time to go and finish my uni degree, which I studied national security and terrorism. So I did that, and I was still working as like a part-time Army, which is like the Army Reserve, basically. So I was doing that while I was studying. So I was doing it about 3 days a week before I finished uni, went to Canberra, still working in intelligence, and I went down and joined the national security community. And I was involved in lots of different roles. But I guess the role that led me to where I am today was kind of a big part of intelligence is this idea of, I don't know if you guys have heard of psychological operations or propaganda. So that is what we call the marketing of the Army world. It's been around for 2,000 plus years. It's not a new concept to the world of defence, and it's definitely evolved over the time, but it's now called something called information operations. And it's how, you know, defence shapes and influences communities in areas of the world that we serve to support our operational objectives. And a lot of that is through the media, it's through our public perception, it's through the way that we act and interact with the local population. And intelligence's job is to really support that understanding of the population, to understand the cultural nuances of all these communities, to help create products that will, get them to do a specific action, or to, drive a certain understanding that's favourable to Australia and our national interests wherever we are. So fast forward, to I think 2019 it was, I left my full-time career and decided that I wanted to do more. The thing about the government is it can be quite bureaucratic and slow to respond to change. And I think, it was really this idea that business, what you could do with a business and the impact that you could have and the speed at which you could have that through business. And especially for me at the time, it was, through this idea of creativity. At the time, it was videography and photography, through this visual medium and this multimedia approach, and how you could really kind of really change people's perceptions of the world just, through a simple documentary or a video about something, or a short story, or I wanted to kind of continue that work but do it through this other means. And that's like 14 years in a nutshell.
Wow. Wow, I like that, because it basically, because my next question was going to ask you what kept you there for so long, like kept you in the army for so long, but obviously the transition and the exploration of your time there gives it sort of substance as to why. Did you think you'd ever be in the army for that long, or was it just the journey that you went on and then that transition was organic?
No, I think, obviously I thought I was just going to be in it for 1 year. And then obviously at the time that I joined, we were in such a heightened security environment. Terrorism was a thing since September 11. The impact of September 11 was continuing to be felt. And I realized that, I guess in high school, I always wanted to do something in the international space. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. And I got so much purpose so quickly. And this, the army, there's such a sense of community and all these things that was, I was like, I can't leave. Like, this is the most interesting work I've ever done. This is amazing. Got to go overseas. I got to see it in, so up close and personal. So yeah, I definitely didn't plan on staying, but a couple of things. So like just the world and the way it was at the time, my personal interests in national security and international relations and all these sorts of things. And then just the job itself, the intelligence job was just so interesting, and it's so like broad and where you could go with it. There was always an opportunity around the corner, like the next opportunity, and you could just go and go for it. Like you could spend your entire life in that career and always be happy and satisfied.
Yeah. That's
really
amazing.
Cool. I have so much respect. So my dad was in the RAF. So I'm a RAF baby, and a lot of respect for the armed forces. So, and to be in that space, to be in Afghanistan, like I knew we've got friends that have been over there. So yeah, amazing work that you've done I feel like from such a young age. And yeah, so that's amazing. But so my question would be, you mentioned around 2019, you sort of moved out of that space and, that creative pool was happening. And we know that you have extensive experience in videography. So when was the idea or the concept behind Hinta created? When was it born? What was that journey? What did that journey look like for you?
So to put it into context, I was a very creative person growing up. My mum used to say I swapped my ballet shoes for army boots because I literally was in point shoes a couple of weeks before I went to basic training. My family's creative. My mum paints, my dad's a musician, all these sorts of things. So it was always very much in that space. And I very much appreciated the value of it. I guess where it came into play was I was doing a lot of creative work as a hobby at the time when I was working in this field. And, I was actually watching a lot of like the YouTube revolution kind of happen where, at the time, I think YouTube really took off around 2012 and social media really took off around 2012. And I was seeing how the amazing work all these content creators were doing. And they were touching on a lot of aspects that we were touching on, but they were approaching it in completely different ways. I remember watching Sam Calder. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he would produce videos that, about rhino poaching in Africa or, all these different topics that kind of touched on security related issues, but they were doing it in such a unique and creative way. And it was getting people's attention and they were listening to it. It was changing their ideas and their perceptions of the world. And I mean, even little things like watching a documentary on Netflix, how the impact that can have on how people understand this space and their beliefs. I just felt like there was nothing. I mean, you could do all the intelligence work in the world, but nothing could change people's perceptions the way a piece of creative work could. But it was bringing those two things together that I think was where like the magic really happened. So I was doing a lot of videography and a lot of photography. I'd worked in a photo shop when I was 12 years old until I joined the army. So I'd had lots of stuff doing that. And I just kind of, I was actually in Bali. I was talking to my friend and I just said, I'm not going back. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I think I'm doing my job. And I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to see where it goes. I just want to see what happens. And I'm like, I knew in my mind, I had this kind of vision of what I wanted the business to be, which, and the type of work I wanted to do. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just kind of, quit my full-time job and threw myself under the bus.
I love that so much. There's something about following a gut feeling that I find so inspiring. Because it's scary, but it's like, it's raw, and it's confusing. And am I doing it right? I don't know. But yeah, I love that it's just like, yep, no, it's time for something different.
Yeah, I think it definitely is a gut feeling. I don't think there is any logical decision there. It is there definitely wasn't a logical decision there. And to me, that gut feeling is the very essence of a lot of creative work, right? It's knowing kind of deep down what you probably should be doing and what's right for you. And don't get me wrong, I'm still very much tied to the military and I still work part-time. About 2 hours from now, I'm going to put my uniform on and go to Irwin Barracks and put my sergeant hat on and do my thing. But yeah, it's I think you have to step away sometimes from what you're doing to really see the paths that are open to you. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was one of those times, and Bali's a great place to see that.
I love Bali. I'm a massive fan of Bali.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no, amazing. So I think from videography and content creation, which you've done a lot of, to brand strategy. What was that transition, and what did you learn from the video and content world that is useful in branding?
So I mean, I started from photography, then I went to video, and now to brand strategy. I think for me, don't get me wrong, I loved creating videos, and I believe in the power of multimedia as a means of communication. And I still think it is one of the most powerful forms of communication. But for me, it was more of I felt like I could serve people better with the brand strategy side of things, because a lot of the time people would come to me for videos to be made. And I mean, these are marketing managers, they're people with experience, but I realized that there was no real sort of underlying strategy behind what they were doing. There was a marketing strategy underlying it, how are we going to convert people from this stage to this stage of the sales funnel? But that emotional strategy didn't exist. That sort of that core message that people were leading with, that kind of aspect, we never got that. And especially in the video space, like you get it from a lot of people had their logo and their colors, but there was no real thought behind how are we positioning ourselves through this multimedia format and how are we building that sort of emotional connection with people. So it really was it was two things. It was one, because I felt like there was a bit of a gap there with a lot of clients. I think a lot of them saw their brand strategy as just getting their logo done and didn't realize that there was so much more behind it. And the creative people can't do, like, we can do a good job and we can do it the best we can. But I was like, there's so much opportunity for you to do this across your entire business, not just like this one thing. And then the other aspect of it as well is, given my background, I felt like my experience probably was better served in that strategic aspect, and where I could bring in my intelligence experience. It was better served there than maybe say on the other end, which is like the content creation part, where all of that strategy work kind of was assumed to be done. Then so I was always taking on these projects and I was kept trying to push into that other space. And they're like, no, we've just hired you for this. And I'm like, oh, but I can't help myself.
There's so much over here that
I was like, what about this? What about this? And I was like, well, you know what? If you're always trying to push into that space, if you're always like wanting to get to the core, like to the root of the challenge, then maybe that's where you need to be focusing.
Yeah, it's more like it's an organic progression for you with your background. So I love that. So you obviously rebranded from Limitless Edition to Hinter. What motivated you to do this rebrand and really crystallize your position in the branding space?
I think what motivated, obviously I kind of just explained the motivator to focus on brand strategy, but for the rebrand itself, there was a couple of things. There was the fact that Limitless Edition was tied to videography, and it had been for 4 years basically. And so there was a lot of brand attachment that I felt like maybe I couldn't undo with that. Also, I just think that, I was completely repositioning to a new industry, and Limitless Edition just did not feel right for this new industry that I was focusing on. Before I was kind of taking work from anywhere around Perth. I was kind of Perth focused, I guess. Now I'm going to be nationally focused and I'm going to be industry specific. And everything from the name, the strategy, my position, everything was changing, and it was either do it now or be stuck with what I've got later on. So it was do it now.
Yeah. And what was the experience working on your own brand as a brand strategist? Because I know for myself doing design, working on your own, it's very different, isn't it?
I honestly was questioning my ability to be a brand strategist working on my own brand.
Yeah, I think that's a common thing when you're doing it for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, it made me appreciate the value of an outsider perspective. I also realized it's really hard not to get emotionally attached to things. It is a brand. It's not something like a piece of software or a piece of legal paperwork. It's something that has emotions attached to it, and I couldn't separate that. I did find it quite difficult, and I had to definitely rely on people around me to keep me focused. I guess now I've done it. I'm like, I do actually, it was great as well because I actually got to experience what clients get to experience. When you present them with their strategy, you present them with all their creative assets, that sort of feeling that you get is amazing, and it's great. I'm glad that I got to feel that. I got so excited every time something got sent through from, Alicia obviously doing my graphics and Took doing my words. I got so excited by all of that, and I said, oh, this is great because this is what clients obviously feel when we do it for them. But also I think I definitely valued that that perspective from the outside, and that's, I guess, what we bring to clients, is being able to look at it objectively for them without getting too emotional about it. But then again, you got to let a little bit of emotion into it as well, because you can't help it.
So, question, from your perspective as a brand strategist, I'm going through a rebrand at the moment. Mm-hmm. What is, like, obviously you mentioned emotions, but what's, like, I don't know, as a business owner who's going through a rebrand, what's, like, your top tip? What's the thing that I need to remember as I'm going through that process? Because it's uncomfortable. It is so uncomfortable. It's exciting, but there's so much that's going on. Then I question myself, and then I feel super aligned, and then I go to bed and I wake up feeling way different.
Okay, I guess my top tip, or actually maybe I'll have two.
Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so I think if it feels uncomfortable, lean into it, because one of my core philosophies is you have to be radically different to stand out these days. And that means doing something uncomfortable, because you will not find another company out there who you can look to as like a ideal. If you find a company out there that's doing exactly what you want to do, then push even further, push the boundaries even further, right? So that would be my tip, because I'm definitely uncomfortable with my rebrand, and I keep reminding myself that's because no one else is doing it. No one else is doing it in this space. And you could tell yourself, well, no one's doing it because the market doesn't exist. But then you have to trust your gut feeling at that point that, no, it does exist, and this group of people do need my help. They just don't necessarily know they need it, or they don't understand it. So that would be one. I think that would be my, be comfortable, like get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And then from doing the rebrand itself, I always say bring it back to the customer all the time. So like when you're doing your purpose, your mission, your values, you're doing your personality, always check yourself. Does this align with who my customer is? Does it align with their identity? Does it align with what challenges they're facing? I think a lot of people, when they rebrand, and it's such a personal experience, and so they bring so much. It's all about them, and it could be really, I guess, a bit dangerous when it's all about you. So you almost need to bring yourself to it, but then you also need to remind yourself that you actually serve somebody else, and you have to keep checking, like it's cool to have this great purpose in life, but does this actually mean anything to anybody? Yeah. So that's two.
I love it. Two hot takes. Brilliant.
That's what I keep telling myself every night. So that's why I feel like I need to tell other people.
It's actually really good. I think the first one, leaning in, that really resonated with me, because, I'm going to start using that.
Lean in. Yeah.
Yeah, with others.
Because isn't there, it's like that quote that's, I suppose, no growth comes from comfortable places or something like that. And maybe that's sort of where that all converges as well.
And nobody wants a carbon copy of something that already exists out there.
That's boring.
It is boring. It is. And there's no such thing as a boring business. There's just boring brands. Ooh. I don't care what business you're in. You can make your brand something of like interesting and exciting. But you have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone to do it.
Mm.
Oh, I love that. There's no such thing as a boring business. It's boring brands.
Boring brands.
Boom.
I don't know. Yeah, we'll see how that one flies.
Yeah.
All right. So
no such thing as a stupid question, just
stupid people.
Stupid people. Am I insulting being saying that? I don't know.
No, it's just the quotes, right, that's said out there. So
all right, so taking it in a little bit of a different direction, to the layman, the layperson, the defence industry brings to mind just I say, our armed forces. Can you give us a bit of a better understanding of the type of clients you work for in that space, if you're allowed to talk about them? And what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I think when people hear the word defense industry, they think just of the armed forces themselves, Army, Navy, Air Force, right?
Yep.
But there's actually this entire community of people around them that support those Army, Navy, Air Force, right? And they are the defense industry. So it's all private, mostly private businesses that are working day and night to provide capability gaps to the defense forces in various different ways. So it could be technology, consulting, sometimes it's even creative work and branding, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody in these industries, in this industry is filling some sort of capability gap that the Defence Force has, either now where it's, preparing for potential conflict or in conflict itself. So when I was in Afghanistan, I was working with contractors who worked for defense industry companies that were filling some form of gap. So some of these companies deploy with us. They work alongside us. They are very much integrated into the daily life. Other companies are huge companies that you would know of. They're, supplying aircraft parts and all sorts of things. And then other companies you will never hear of ever, but they are playing a role in some way, shape or form for those capability gaps. Because we can't do obviously, being a uniformed member or even just a member of the public service, you can't do everything. You don't have all the tools available to you because you don't have a team of expert scientists in the world creating just this one thing. They're not going to hire those people to work for them 24/7 to create that one gap. So industry provides a massive role in filling that.
I feel like that's the same. So we talk about the Defence Forces, defence industry. That's the same as a business owner as well. As like you have your specialties that are around you that you employ to all the experts that you have on your team to assist you in, filling those gaps. I think it's really important that people understand that you don't necessarily have to do it all. And you're not expected to do it all. And the same in those defence industry spaces, it's that they can't do it all. So they bring in those external contractors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's not just external contract, like the people itself, it's also like the equipment. A lot of equipment that you use. I mean, even when you think about the internet came from the military. A lot of the things that we know and love and use in our daily lives all started there, like their core came from the military, or it served some form of military purpose. I think Wi-Fi was one of them maybe as well. But like all of these things generally born out of a need in some form of wartime, and then it was commercialized later on for the rest of the world. Or it could happen vice versa. Like something amazing can happen in the private industry and commercial world, like drones, for example, this amazing technology that the average person can go and buy, but that also has some utility for the military as well. So it definitely works both ways.
That's such a good segue for what I'm about to ask you.
Yeah.
So obviously there's branding, then there's the defense industry, and like putting those together in a sentence, I haven't really heard of or read in our lives, basically, that kind of those two together. So my question to you then is, so does branding have a role in the defense industry? Obviously it does. And how?
Yeah. So my thoughts around branding is that we are all building a brand, whether we are being strategic about it or whether we know we're doing it, right? So every defense industry company has built themselves a brand, or every business is building a brand, whether they know it or not. So branding in defense industry, I think for a long time, branding and marketing in this industry was always, it was so secretive, and everything was always kept so close hold that, you know, everything was done across the table. It was all done sort of under the radar. And then I guess branding and marketing people didn't really see it as having a place. When, you know, at no point would you ever go out there and advertise what you offer when you're just selling it to the military. A lot of it was very much kept close hold. The thing is, times are changing now in that space, and more defense industry companies are getting more comfortable with the idea of with being more strategic with their brand, putting themselves out there on social media, thinking about how they can contribute other than just the products they provide, how, you know, what influence, what reputation their brand has in this space. And there's a lot of reasons why that's happened. You know, the security environment is degrading again for a different reason to terrorism. So the needs of the defense industry are going up. However, we've kind of got this situation where the budgets has drastically reduced for lots of reasons, you know, the kind of economic status that we're in. So we've got like this heightened security environment with massive budget pressures and increasing competition. And all of that is coming together in kind of this little, can I swear on this? This shitstorm.
Yeah, there you go.
I was like, I don't know if I can swear. So this is all, coming together and creating a very different environment to what maybe these companies faced 10 years ago. So, you know, I like to say, you know, when you're building a brand or the role that branding plays in the defense industry, it's not going to be the traditional role that, say, branding plays in a B2C company where, you know, you might look at something like Nike and the brand that they've built and how they do it. And you can't carbon copy what Nike does and do it with this industry, because there's still so much secrecy around it. There's still so much, it's just a different way that businesses need to approach it, but they can still get the same great outcomes from it.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I feel like there's, it's almost, there's a different mindset to it as well. The way that obviously that all comes together, and then is produced. But you talk a little bit about budgets and the budget constraints. So as a business owner, in the defense industry or whatever that may be, if you are looking at a brand strategy, you know, and there are budget cuts and there are things that maybe you can't do right now, what would you recommend to prioritize when it comes to a brand strategy?
So, you know, traditionally, I think branding has always focused on that front end, you know, the advertising, the marketing aspect. I think for us, branding really need to focus on the back end. So what are you doing to keep your customers? What are you doing to improve the loyalty of the clients that you already have? How is your brand being leveraged to shape the way people think about your industry and what they need? Because if your big businesses on the chopping block because of a budget cut that's come through, and I've seen this in the last sort of 3 months after there's this thing called the Defense Strategic Review that came out, and, you know, we're acquiring nuclear submarines and where's the money coming from, and all these implications that are affecting all these companies that already have projects and stuff with this, with defense. What are you doing? How is your brand helping you to keep that contract? How is that brand how are you leveraging that brand to shape the way people think about your product or the services that you provide, and why that matters to them and why it's important? Because if you're not doing anything, then you're probably going to be on that chopping block sooner rather than later. So it's almost like, in a way, it's almost too late. You probably should have started doing this, you know, 12 months ago, 2 years ago, right? But if anything, you can start doing it now. So you're not thinking about social media as a way to get a new client. It's thinking about, how can I use social media to keep my clients? How can I shape the way they think about this particular thing that I'm delivering, and why is that important, and why do they need it?
Brand loyalty.
Yeah, brand loyalty. Yeah, ultimately trust. Yeah. It's trust, it's reputation, and it's loyalty. Yeah, it's not about it. That's why I mean, it's thinking of your brand as a traditional company about how you're going to get new clients and how you're going to stand out on a crowded shelf in Woolworths. You know, that's not going to be the main focus.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these companies, they only get one contract every 3 years, you know, but that one contract will keep them, that will, you know, serve
period of time.
Yeah, that'll keep them going for 3 years. It'll keep a business for 10 staff plus. But what are you doing in the meantime for the next contract to come through?
So because it's almost like it's a never-ending cycle, right? And creating that loyalty, trust, retention should be starting from day one.
It should.
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So a little bit more of a spotlight on you. So when it comes to your approach to creating a brand strategy, what's different? What makes you different from other brand strategists?
Apart from the fact that my experience from being in the military, which is the very people that these, you know, companies are trying to sell to. So having that really in-depth understanding of the culture of defense, the way we talk, the language we use, the things we care about, the gaps, all of that stuff. But from like an actual, you know, you mean like from a process perspective? Like what can I expect?
Like what does that look like? Do you, obviously we've spoken about how that brand strategy, it's not traditional. It's very different from, as you said, B2C. So is there aspects of that process that you do differently that is specific to that sort of defense industry?
Yeah. So obviously, when we're looking at things like creating touch points, for example, we're not looking at the touch points that everybody else would traditionally do and the way that you would traditionally put the information out there. Mm-hmm. We have to think about it a lot more discreetly, a lot more secretive. Not secretive, that's probably not the right word, but discreet, right? Mm-hmm. Discreet is probably the aim here of how can I still get everything, my message out there, everything I want to communicate out there without plastering to the world what I do.
Yeah, you know? It's not like a big bang, hey, look at us sort of stuff.
Yeah. It's like you want to command attention without telling the world everything about you, because a lot of things in this world are protected. Like there's IP, there's sensitivities around capabilities, and we, you know, we've got to kind of be a bit more nuanced with how we use each touch point to get that, you know, to deliver on that promise. The other thing I guess we will do is, instead of traditionally, you know, looking at traditional metrics like brand awareness, which, you know, would be a common metric that people come to a branding company for, is brand awareness. We would look more on, well, what is the impact that this brand is having on the industry? So you're almost measuring a different success. You're still measuring brand loyalty. Like I'd say measuring brand loyalty is more important to me than brand awareness. But also measuring the specific, you know, if you set a purpose or a mission and you set an operating philosophy, well, how are you going to know that you are actually achieving that effect on the industry itself? How is your brand actually working towards that metric? It's not just about what metrics are going to help our business. It's also about what metrics are helping the defense itself. So making sure we kind of set those metrics as well, because you really are serving two different aspects here. You're serving your own business and the brand, building the brand to support the business, but your brand is also being built to serve the country. So we need to kind of make sure we have those two things clearly laid out.
I love it. I think it's a different way of approaching and thinking of what that brand looks like. As I said, a lot of people are like, big bang, I want attention, but obviously that's not your goal. And setting metrics accordingly, so important.
Yeah, like we recently did a brand strategy for a defense industry client, and you know, we definitely had those traditional branding metrics set out, like brand awareness, brand loyalty, etc. But it was more important for them that their brand was having an impact on the space that they wanted to, and you know, we set 3 key impact objectives more so than brand objectives. And they even said, like, this is actually going to be really helpful for when they report back on their corporate social responsibility, because it's like, I don't know, like, we're using our brand here to do more than just sell our product.
Yeah. Do you think with the example that you've given and basically with that whole perspective, do you find that there's certain mindset stuff that you have to come up with in the industry? And how is that approached, or have you found that? Because just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I think because the industry is quite rudimentary in their understanding of branding into like what it is today, as opposed to what it is, say, 50 years ago, which, you know, most people assume branding was a logo. A lot of people do think that, well, my brand strategy is basically their marketing strategy, but just getting a logo and some colors done and maybe their website designed, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of one of the challenges, I guess, from my perspective is really showing what your brand can do and the asset that your brand can be, other than just being a bunch of creative designs or assets that you're going to use to create marketing material. So it's kind of expanding the understanding of what branding is for an industry that has never really, even though, like I said, they are all building a brand, whether they realize they're doing it or not, but they've never understood that branding is more than marketing, and it's kind of sits, it's like this bigger thing that sits over the top. So yeah, that's probably one of the challenges. But in saying that, I've had clients that have been really, really open to the idea, and yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other examples other than the example that you gave about, you know, your process with them and how you've managed to, take them through that, something that perhaps they didn't realize that they can implement within their branding?
I can't really talk about the specific companies, but I can kind of give you an idea of what that process looks like for them. So, for example, one group, you know, they kind of thought that branding was a little bit airy-fairy and a little bit like, you know, whatever, you put it on your website, but no one actually believes any of that stuff, right? So they almost like, they knew it as it was like a checkbox thing, right? Like I have this about page and I put my purpose and my mission on there and I have some logos and colors, but whatever, none of it actually means anything. It's just like marketing fluff. Anyway, so when we worked with that company and took them through the journey of, you know, connecting how your brand logo is actually an extension of your position, and your position is what makes you different to everybody else, and that brand, you know, that purpose isn't just something that you make up. It is something that you tangibly work towards every single day through various aspects of your brand, and your value statements aren't these fluffy things that you know throw out into the world. They're actually a part of positioning you differently. Again, you know, this is what makes you unique, and you can use this to guide all of your strategic messaging, from your sales team to your internal, like to your employees. And it's about that clarity. And they, I guess, by taking them on that journey and seeing how everything does connect, and that the logo at the end of the day is the representation of all of this meaning. It's not just something someone randomly picked out and thought it looked pretty. That really did kind of change their perception of what branding is. And, you know, it isn't just a marketing tool and a bunch of fluffy messages to make. Yeah, basically.
Airy-fairy.
Airy-fairy, it is. And, you know, it did make me interested. It did make me think when that client, when I spoke to that client about that, because I was thinking, I don't want to see marketing and branding being deduced to a bunch of fluffy messages that nobody believes in. So what are businesses doing to make sure that they're not just so, a bunch of front-facing fluff, that's what I mean, where you really got to measure the impact that you're having, not just the metrics to yourself. It's like, if you're going to start saying these things, if you're going to go out and you're going to stand for something, you're going to have a purpose, you're going to have a mission, you're going to have a position, well, you better be ready to defend that and know that you're working towards that, because otherwise we are just contributing to what maybe a portion of the population already thinks about branding and marketing.
Mm.
I love that passion. There's a little bit of fire there. I love it. So just a little bit more. You mentioned around the defense industry and obviously the impact that has on our country as well. So I'd love to get a bit of your perspective on how the defense industry has a flow-on effect to our country. And, it makes sense, as defense is certainly something that runs in the background and underpins everything that we do as a country. So do you have any examples of how defense companies have impacted others?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I can't really give you a specific
That's fine.
names of companies. But, I've always, believed that your brand is an asset, and that asset is a tool to command attention. It's a tool to shape and influence the way people think and feel. Like I've kind of talked about videography, you've created this thing that changes how people feel about it. The more powerful your brand is, the bigger the impact that you can have. Of course, we have our products and our services and we have an impact through those, but it's when you start actually using that brand and that sort of that tool of influence within itself, and you can start amplifying that. You go from having an impact here with just your products and services to then creating thought leadership, to then shaping the way people think and feel about things. So, when companies start thinking about their brand as almost this extra product, almost it's like this extra service that they offer where they can provide resources, they can build expertise for their community, they can rally a community of people around a common goal, and when you do that, that community then also starts amplifying that impact as well. So I guess I'm trying to think of a specific example for you where what that looks like. So a company, one of their brand values was about giving back, and they were a defense industry company, and unfortunately they were really struggling with getting their defense clients to kind of be a part of this corporate social responsibility initiative where they, it was a very important metric to them, and it was very important for them to be, as a brand, to make sure that they were giving back to their local community. But a lot of their clients, they were from they might have been from Perth, but working in Canberra. And those people in Perth don't really have that connection with Canberra. And so by putting in, using their brand to connect better with that defense audience, they can start inviting them to come to events. They can bring them into community initiatives. They can invite them into this, almost like this little network to give back to their community. So in a way, it wasn't even really about defense. It was actually just about getting defense people who weren't from this area to be a part of something important within the area that they're living in. They're only there for 3 years and then they post out and they go somewhere else, but it gives them meaning and fulfillment while they're there in that space. And that, that company is helping to do that through their brand.
Well, I feel like there's some really important points there around just how much I love your brand is almost another product, and how much your brand can, and those values and that mission can impact not just obviously what you do, but what you provide to others. I think, rallying community, that's what we're all about at Branducopia, is bringing that community together, and just showing how much a brand can bring a community together is I think it just shows the importance of it. No fluff.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where it's important. Like you got to have those tangible goals that you've set for the brand as well as the business. So the brand will support the business, it will bring clients, etc. But you know, this company was getting creative with how they were using their brand to support the defense community in a way that you wouldn't think. You'd think like, oh, well, it must be something defense related. It's like, no, this was actually just about the well-being of the defense in a city that most of them were not from.
Yep.
And that's a really unique way that a brand, defense industry brand is giving back without it, you know, providing weapons and without, you know, what you would think traditionally, planes and a contractor. Of course, they provided contractors, but it was something else that their brand was doing.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
That's super cool.
All right. So just a little bit different. So it feels like we're in a state of flux with some of the things that are going on defense country-wise, and you know that obviously impacts the work that you do and the industry that you work in. Do you see any changes in the space, or and how do you think that branding helps address these concerns if they come up for any of your clients?
Yeah, I think I sort of touched on a few of it before, like the budget cuts and the changing of strategic. I mean, defense has just gone through a massive change of how we are actually strategically defending the nation. We've got a new strategy. And of course, you know, instantly like huge projects just got cut as part of that. And other projects, you know, there's all this opportunity that has just opened up. So, you know, if you can align your brand to what we, you know, publicly that is out there and it's known that this is the direction that defense is going in for the next 10 years, this is the things that we need, this is the things that we care about, well, you know, there's the opportunity for people to align their brands to those needs. And that's a really easy way to connect with what the defense, like the direction that the defense is going in the future. So of course, we can help them do that, but it's like, are you a part of the you know, if you look at this strategic review and you look at parts of it, well, where does your business fit into that? How are you a part of that conversation? How is your brand supporting that conversation? And what, you know, I think thought leadership is going to be a huge part of branding going forward, especially in this space, is because, you know, if you want your brand to have influence over future decision making, you need to be the forefront of a lot of these conversations about these topics for particular issues, whether it's something to do with logistics, it's something to do with aircraft, something to do with even information operations. You know, like I myself will probably start providing some form of thought leadership on information operations, because even though defense itself is not a client of mine, I like support the companies around it. It's still about, well, what direction does this aspect of defense need to go in? How is, you know, propaganda, which is like old school advertising. I mean, we're not going to keep going down that path, are we? Like, we've got to evolve even their understanding of the way we shape perception. So, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest, like, although there's challenges from the cuts, there's the opportunities, and you've got to be able to find those opportunities and lean into it quickly.
There it is again, leaning into it.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. No, I love
it. That's such a good segue for what I was about to ask is, are there any branding trends or developments that you're super excited about, whether that's within the defense industry or just in general? I would love to know.
I've just got a visitor. Hold up 1 second. I'm just on a call. Sorry. Yeah, so start the question again.
Okay. It's like interlude. Okay, so I'm just going to ask. So we definitely divide into the nitty-gritty here. So as we finish up, I just wanted to talk about, are there any branding trends or developments that you're super keen and excited to see whether that's in the defense, just the defense industry, like the potential's there, or branding trends or developments in general?
So trends in general, I think AI, and I'm probably not the first person who's going to say this, but I think AI is a really interesting trend. And I think people are going to see it either as a negative or a positive for them, especially in the creative industries. I personally think it's a massive opportunity for creatives to upskill and to up-level what they do. And then AI can take care of all the stuff that, probably most people didn't want to do in the first place, all that sort of nitty-gritty rote work. So I think that's going to be, for the creative industry and the branding industry in general, is going to be really important, and how people are going to ride that wave. As well, I think a good trend in branding and in marketing as well is it's the authenticity aspect that we've moved into. It's no longer people are going to be swayed by advertising, that authority and respect is just not going to be there straight away just because you're a company that's been around for 20 years. People have higher expectations. And so brands are going to have to work harder, but I also think it means that we're going to have a bigger impact because we have to work harder, because we have to prove that what we're saying is true. And you can't just make these false marketing claims anymore, because people will call you out. They'll call you out so fast. So it's almost like it's like a BS radar for so many brands out there. And that's a good thing, in my opinion, because I think we've probably had the last 30 or 40 years of messages being thrown at us, and we've got no way to actually prove whether they're authentic or not.
It's funny you say that. It just makes me think of, I looked at an Instagram post the other day, and it's of this cooking. It's great. But then the first comment on top was like, it took me 10 clicks to get to the recipe. Why is the recipe not? And the person just calls them out. And I just think, yeah, you're right. And I think that with the AI, obviously the opposite is obviously being more authentic. So it's all, I can see those two sort of trends coming together.
Yeah. Oh, and people will pick you out straight away. If you start using AI, you think you can just leverage AI to write all of your blogs, to do everything for you, they will pick you out so fast. So if anything, it's going to make brands even better, because brands are going to have to be more authentic. They're going to have to be more human to be different from the ones that are going to be established by AI.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, use AI. Use it when you've already know how to humanize your brand.
Yeah.
Don't think that AI is going to do it for you.
Yes.
Love that. And then one last question before I hand it to Jess to finish up. What do you think is the biggest area of opportunity for most businesses when it comes to branding?
I actually didn't think about this question.
It's a bit of a loaded question.
It's a big one.
The biggest area of opportunity for most businesses when it comes to branding. I think the opportunity there is, it's a space where you can bring personality. It's a space that you can bring creativity, and you can play with that creativity without, like I said, I see almost your brand as like a product in itself. It's like it's an asset, and it's a really great way to test things and to play with ideas and to get instant feedback. So, if you can learn to leverage the brand for that purpose, you probably don't have to spend so much money developing a product that no one's ever going to use, because your brand will, they will give you that feedback. They'll give you that community of people that you've built around that brand. They're almost like they're on your team, right? Like they want you to succeed. So the opportunity is there for businesses to build that. But there's a lot of benefits, I guess, to building a brand. But yeah, like I said, it is about leaning into that difference. It's about being able to, maybe your product's not that different, but your brand can be. And you there's limitless, like endless potential there for where you want to, you know, the narrative that you want to shape around that. So yeah, it's a space. It is your opportunity to think outside the box, regardless of whether, you know, you sell like a water bottle or an aircraft.
I think there's a lot of value in that. No, that was really good, and I think it ties together a lot of what you've been saying, like bringing that personality, leaning into things, and you know, there's no, it just resonates. There's no such thing as a bad business, but a bad brand.
And
right, like your brand can fail. Your business could be like you could have the best product in the world, but if you don't brand it correctly, then the whole thing could fail. So, like there's a lot of risk there. Like, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of opportunity there for you to take whatever idea you have and in whatever direction you want, but you have to be willing to take a risk.
And my 2 bobs worth is, I think you did answer the question correctly, because it was a bit of a loaded, open question. But I think people's mindset towards what branding is, by what you're saying, like that, making it more authentic, and the tips that you've given actually is the opportunity that will then give them greater opportunity. So
yeah. Well, I think most probably branding and creative people will say to lean into your personality, lean into what makes you different. But that now more than ever is going to be important, especially as AI comes along.
Good old AI. It's a hot topic.
It is. I know. I'll try not to dwell on it too much, but
no. I think it's. I mean, people are talking about it, right? And it is. I think we've said before, it's a tool, it's an asset that you can use within your business. But yeah, 100%. Don't be getting it to write all your blogs, because people will find you.
They will call you out so hard, and it's going to be embarrassing. So be real.
Look, thank you so much for your time today, Emma. For everyone that's been watching and listening and are thinking right now, I can definitely relate to this and I'd love to work with Emma, you know, how can they find you, and what are those channels and how can they get in contact?
Yep. So website, wearehinter.com.au. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Emma Sutton, and I kind of put my 2 cents of the world out there on LinkedIn. And but yeah, from there you can also access the LinkedIn Hinter page.
Brilliant. Oh, look, thank you so much. It's been so good to chat, and I think it's just such a different perspective of, like, it is like branding in the defense industry is not something I've probably put in a sentence before. 100%.
I don't think anyone has.
It's actually refreshing talking to you, because your perspective is very holistic, and you look at things more, I don't even know how to explain it, more holistic, and you take things from other things, and I like that.
I actually think that's probably one of the things that creatives need to do more, is maybe get outside of their own industry and step out and see how I mean, like, you guys probably both know this because you probably both came from a different industry completely. And I know Took has as well. And I think it's because we've come from a different background that we can bring something unique to the space. But if all you've ever known is working, you know, going to art school, going to doing marketing.
Little blinkers on.
Yeah, it is, right? But that's not where, in my opinion, that's not where real creativity comes from. It comes from exploring different worlds and then combining them together. It's pretty hard to come up with a fresh idea these days, but you can certainly combine 2 ideas together to create something new.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
brilliant. Yay. Thank you so much. This has been brilliant.
Yeah, this has been very good.